What happens when the CEO of a 9-store BBQ chain walks into his own kitchen in a fake beard and apron, and nobody knows who he is? Nathaniel Pierce had never grilled a rack of ribs in his life, at least not professionally. His father started the BBQ chain nearly 30 years ago, and Nathaniel took over when he passed. The business had grown fast, 9 busy locations across 3 states. But lately, complaints had been creeping in. Orders delayed, food overcooked, staff turnover spiking. Most of the reports came from Store 7, located just outside Tulsa. Nathaniel had never met most of the workers. The hiring was handled by district managers, and with a rotating staff, he didn't know who was still there. He'd kept his distance, trusting the systems his dad built. But now that things were going sideways, that distance felt like a mistake. He decided to go in himself. He had a professional disguise team help him out. They gave him a buzz cut, added fake crow's feet, a thick Oklahoma drawl, and a believable backstory. Nate Parker, a former mechanic looking to pick up a new trade after getting laid off. The company's HR team helped schedule him in as a new trainee at Store 7. They didn't know who he really was. No photos of him were around the stores. He never did press, and he kept his social media locked down. To them, he was just another body filling a shift. He walked into the store on a Wednesday morning. The place was already loud country music playing low over the speakers, the scent of smoked brisket in the air. A line of customers wrapped around the corner, and the staff looked tense. 2 waitresses were scrambling to cover the front. The manager, a man in his mid-40s with thinning hair and a red polo, barked orders from behind the counter. "Yo, who's the new guy?" the manager asked. Nathaniel held out his hand. "Nate got hired in as a trainee." The manager gave him a quick once-over. "You show up on time, don't screw around, and I won't have a problem with you. Got it? Got it. You'll be shadowing Alex on the grill. Don't touch nothing unless he tells you to." Nathaniel nodded. The manager walked off without another word. Nathaniel made a mental note, not big on welcomes. He made his way to the back kitchen where the heat hit him like a wall. Giant smokers lined the back wall, and the grill was hissing hot. A tall, broad-shouldered guy with a patchy beard flipped ribs with practiced ease. "You Nate?" "Yeah, I'm Alex." "Don't talk too much and don't get in my way and we'll be fine," Nathaniel chuckled. Fair enough. The first hour was chaos. Alex barely said a word, just shouted orders, "Hand me the tongs." "Those briskets need flipping." Nathaniel struggled to keep up. He dropped a tray of cornbread, burned his thumb on a pan, and nearly knocked over a bucket of sauce. "Man, you move like you ain't ever worked a kitchen," Alex said, not unkindly. "First time," Nathaniel said. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Damn." "All right, well, come here." He motioned him over and grabbed a rack of ribs. "See this?" Alex pointed to the meat. "You don't just cook it till it's hot, you cook it till the bone speaks to you." Nathaniel blinked. "What does that mean?" Alex grinned. "You'll get it. When the meat pulls back just the right way from the bone, it's singin'. That's when it's ready." Nathaniel watched him work, absorbing every move. Despite the heat and chaos, Alex had a rhythm. He moved with care, like the food mattered. Nathaniel couldn't help but respect it. Then a younger guy walked in, barely out of high school, lanky, nervous. "Hey, I'm supposed to start today." Alex looked up. "You the new line cook?" "Yeah, Tony." Alex tossed him an apron. "Good, you'll be shadowing me and Nate." Tony looked at Nathaniel. "You new too?" "Yeah," Nathaniel replied with a grin. "Guess we'll both be learning." Alex didn't waste time. He started showing Tony how to prep ribs, how to keep the grill clean, how to check the heat without a thermometer. "Use your palm," Alex said, holding his hand over the grill for a few seconds. "See that? That's around 350. You feel it in your skin after a while." Tony nodded, focused. Nathaniel stepped back, watching quietly as Alex walked Tony through each step. He didn't rush, he didn't yell. He explained everything like it mattered, like Tony mattered. "Always clean as you go," Alex said. "You don't respect your station, it won't respect you." Tony nodded again. "Got it." Nathaniel folded his arms, mouth tight. This was what his company was supposed to be about, real training. Real care, not managers barking from the front and workers left to fend for themselves. A few hours later, they finished the lunch rush. Nathaniel and Tony were both soaked in sweat, but Tony looked proud. Alex handed him a wet towel. Not bad for your first day. You didn't cry or quit, so you're ahead of most, Tony laughed. Thanks, man, Nathaniel looked over at Alex. You always train new guys like this. Yeah, Alex said, wiping his hands. Most don't last, but I figure if they want to learn, I'll teach them. Nathaniel nodded slowly. You ever get recognized for it? Alex shrugged. Nah, don't need it. I just hate seeing people set up to fail. That hit hard. Nathaniel leaned against the wall, silent. Outside, the manager was yelling at a waitress for forgetting a drink order. A customer at the counter looked annoyed. The dining area was messy and no one seemed to care, but in the back, the grill was steady. The food was right. And a rookie was learning because one guy gave a damn. Nathaniel knew what he had to do, but first he had to see more. The real story wasn't out front. It was back here by the grill in the fire, where Care still lived. And tomorrow, he'd be back for another shift. Nathaniel returned the next morning just after 7. The sky was still pale and the parking lot half empty, but the kitchen lights were already on. He walked in through the back entrance, tugging his apron tight. His arms were still sore from the day before. Inside, Alex was already prepping the smoker, laying in briskets with careful hands, rubbing spice into the meat in slow, even motions. A small radio on the shelf played a blues track at low volume. Didn't think you'd show up again, Alex said without looking up. I figured I'd give it another shot, Nathaniel replied, hanging his apron on the hook. I didn't drop anything yet today, so I'm already ahead. Alex gave a brief chuckle, then nodded toward the sink. Wash up, then we'll get the ribs trimmed. We're short again. Nathaniel turned on the faucet. Same crew as yesterday. Less, actually, Alex said. Tony's not in. Something about a school test. Olivia called out too. Migraine, I think, so it's just you and me till the lunch shift shows up. Anyone else coming for prep? Nope. Manager said budget's tight, told me to figure it out. Nathaniel dried his hands and reached for a cutting board. What do we start with? Alex slid a tray toward him. Spare ribs first, then we'll get the chicken glazed. They worked in silence for a while. The rhythm was faster than yesterday, Alex moving efficiently, Nathaniel doing his best not to slow him down. There was no time to pause. Orders hadn't even started yet, and already the pace felt like mid-rush. As they moved through the prep, Nathaniel noticed Alex's left hand shaking slightly when he carried heavier trays. Not enough to drop anything, but just enough to make you wonder if he was pushing through pain. You all right? Nathaniel asked. Alex shook his head once, more in irritation than denial. Old break never healed right. Some days it acts up, it's fine. You ever take time off for it? Who'd cover if I did? Nathaniel didn't answer. He knew the truth. No one would, not here. By 10:30, the first customers started trickling in. A young woman from the front came back with a ticket already in hand. 2 brisket sandwiches, 1 pulled pork, extra pickles, she said, pinning the slip on the rail. All ready, Alex muttered. Great. Let's go. Nathaniel slid open the warming drawer and started assembling the buns. Alex sliced meat with quick, clean motions, his blade never hesitating. Nathaniel added the toppings and wrapped the sandwiches just as another order came through. There was no time to talk. By 11, the line was out the door. Nathaniel lost track of how many plates he'd prepped. Sweat ran down his back, and the heat from the grill made the kitchen feel like an oven with no door. The storage rack behind him rattled every time he turned too fast. A new runner came in, a teenager who looked barely old enough to drive. Where do I take the trays? He asked, holding a full plate of ribs like it might bite. Follow the wall, table 12, Alex called out. Don't drop it. The kid gave a nervous nod and disappeared. Nathaniel leaned in. You even know his name? Nope. Who trains the runners? Alex gave a tight shrug. They don't stay long enough, I just tell him which way to walk. Another order came in, then another. Nathaniel kept moving. By noon, Alex's hand was shaking again, worse than before. "Let me take over slicing for a bit," Nathaniel said. "You sure?" Alex hesitated, eyes flicking to the carving knife. "I've watched you enough, I won't butcher it." Alex stepped back, flexing his hand. "Trim from the top. Let the knife do the work." Nathaniel nodded and got to it. The meat was tender, still warm from the smoker, and the knife moved easier than he expected. He focused on consistency, thick enough to hold, thin enough to bite clean. After a few minutes, Alex gave a small nod of approval and went back to assembling trays. They moved like that for another hour. Then, without warning, a crash sounded from the front. A tray hit the floor and a sharp voice followed. "Get someone out here. This table's been waiting 40 minutes, Nathaniel looked up. Alex didn't flinch. "That's the third delay today," Alex muttered, grabbing a fresh bun. "We're falling behind. Should we slow orders?" "Manager won't do that. He'll just yell until someone quits." A few minutes later, the front door swung open and the manager stormed in, who's handling orders. "Why are tickets stacking?" Alex didn't look up. "We're short." "Doing what we can." The manager's voice rose. "Figure it out. This isn't a charity." Nathaniel stepped in. "We've been running non-stop since morning. Maybe cut off online orders for an hour." The manager turned to him, eyes narrowing. "You're the new guy. You don't make calls." "I'm not," Nathaniel caught himself. "Just trying to help." The manager walked out without another word. Alex exhaled through his nose. "He doesn't come back here unless he wants someone to blame." "Has it always been this bad?" Alex hesitated. "It got worse after Thomas left. He used to be back-of-house lead. Real solid, trained me actually." "What happened?" "Promised a raise, never came. He left for a truck job, makes more hauling pallets than he did here." Nathaniel nodded slowly, mind already spinning. By 2, the rush slowed. The grill was quieter, the heat still heavy but less frantic. Nathaniel leaned against the prep table, wiping sweat from his brow. "You ever think about leaving too?" he asked. Alex leaned on the counter, rubbing his hand. "Sure, but my kid's in school nearby, schedule works, and I like the food." "That counts for something." Nathaniel glanced toward the dining area. A few customers lingered, picking at half-eaten meals. The front counter was unmanned. Plates sat piling in the dish bin. "You think the higher-ups know how things are down here?" Alex barked a short laugh. "They don't come down here, they don't ask." Nathaniel didn't say anything. He just stared at the dish pile, letting the silence fill the space. Just then, the teenage runner returned from the front, chewing on the inside of his cheek. "Some guy at table 4 wants a refund," he said. "Says his fries were cold." Alex wiped his hands. "Tell him we'll remake the order." The teen hesitated. "Manager told me not to promise anything. Tell him anyway." The kid nodded slowly and walked off. Nathaniel leaned in. "You're not worried about getting chewed out?" Alex shrugged. "Worried? No. Tired of it?" "Yeah." Before Nathaniel could reply, Tony walked in through the back door, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey, sorry I missed this morning. I had a final." Alex raised a brow. "You passed." "Barely, but yeah. Good, wash up." "We'll get you on cleanup." Tony dropped his bag and headed to the sink. Alex turned to Nathaniel. "Kid's sharp, learns fast. If he sticks, he'll be better than me in 2 years." "Then what?" Nathaniel asked. Alex paused. "Then maybe he won't have to hustle through lunch rushes just to pay rent." Nathaniel didn't reply. He didn't have anything to say that would make sense to say as Nate Parker. Instead, he picked up a rag and started wiping down the prep table. By the end of the shift, the sink was full, the grill empty, and the kitchen finally quiet. Alex sat on a milk crate by the walk-in, rubbing his temples. Tony was scrubbing pans without complaint. The teenage runner had already left, someone forgetting to tell him to clock out. Nathaniel looked around the kitchen. It wasn't just tired, it was worn, overused, underkept. And the people inside it were the same. As he untied his apron, Alex looked up. "You're not bad, Nate. You listen. Most people come in here thinking it's just meat and fire. But you actually pay attention." "Thanks," Nathaniel said. Alex stood and stretched, wincing slightly. "You in tomorrow?" "Yeah, I'll be here." He walked outside into the fading light. His shirt stuck to his back and the scent of smoked meat clung to his skin. He sat in his truck for a long time before starting the engine, watching as Alex locked the back door and disappeared around the corner, moving slower than he had that morning. Nathaniel didn't move until the lot was empty. He was beginning to understand just how broken things had gotten, not because people didn't care, but because they were left to carry weight they were never meant to bear. And tomorrow, he wasn't showing up just to learn. He was showing up to decide. The next morning, Nathaniel arrived before sunrise. The parking lot was still dark, dew clinging to the asphalt. His boots echoed against the pavement as he unlocked the back entrance with the temporary key card HR had issued. He was early by nearly an hour, but he needed time to think. The subtle ache in his shoulders reminded him of yesterday's lunch rush. He'd never worked a job that left his hands trembling by the end of a shift. There was something humbling about how physical it all was, how nothing worked unless someone worked for it. He understood a little more now why Store 7 was falling short. It wasn't laziness. It was exhaustion. Inside, the kitchen lights were still off. He flipped the switch and walked straight to the prep station. A clipboard with the day's checklist sat beside a half-used roll of butcher paper. He scanned the items: smoker prep, rib rub batch, cornbread batter. He figured he could knock a few things out before the others arrived. He was halfway through trimming a tray of ribs when Alex walked in. His usual cap was missing and his eyes looked heavier than the day before. "You sleep here or something?" Alex asked, dropping his backpack near the dry storage shelf. "Just figured I'd get ahead. Makes the day easier, right?" Alex hung his coat and walked over. "You're cutting those too close. You're gonna dry them out." Nathaniel adjusted his knife angle without a word. Alex watched for a few seconds, then reached into the drawer for gloves. "Keep doing what you're doing. I'll get the rub started." They worked in steady silence until the first signs of daylight broke through the back window. The kitchen slowly warmed with the heat of the smokers coming to life. Once the meat was set and the rubs tucked back on the shelf, Alex leaned against the edge of the prep table and pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "Hey, got a weird question for you," he said, tapping the paper against his hand. "You know anything about OSHA regs?" Nathaniel looked up from the tray he was wrapping. "Some. Why?" Alex unfolded the note, revealing a list written in pen. "This guy I know from another store said if we're working past 10 hours, we're supposed to get an extra break. And if we're handling hot equipment, there's supposed to be a burn kit on site. You ever hear that?" Nathaniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's in the handbook." "Why?" Alex looked toward the supply closet, then shrugged. "No burn kit, and I haven't had a second break in weeks. Just wondering if that's normal." "It's not supposed to be." Alex folded the list and tucked it back in his pocket. "Didn't think so. I'm not trying to make waves, but I dunno. I've been thinking lately about how long I can keep doing this." Nathaniel rinsed his hands, then reached for a clean towel. "You thinking about leaving?" Alex shook his head. "Not yet, but I've got a daughter. She's starting high school next year. I want to be around. I don't want to be dragging myself home so tired I forget what she told me 5 minutes ago." Nathaniel didn't respond. He couldn't nod as Nate Parker. Not yet. As the morning passed, the rest of the staff trickled in. Tony returned just before 9, still wiping sleep from his eyes. He tossed his backpack behind the mop sink and headed straight for the hand wash station. "You good to run the fryer station today?" Alex asked him as he loaded a sheet of cornbread into the oven. Tony nodded. "I practiced at home last night. Just don't let me burn down the place. I'll keep a fire extinguisher handy." Nathaniel watched as Tony moved toward the fryer. His steps were more confident than 2 days ago. He lined up the baskets, checked the oil level, and began staging the sides without being asked. That quiet initiative caught Nathaniel's attention. It wasn't just that Tony was learning fast, it was that he wanted to prove something. That kind of drive didn't come from nowhere. "Tony," Nathaniel said while wiping down the prep table, "you working anywhere else?" Tony shook his head. "Just here. I was doing pizza deliveries for a while, but the hours were trash. This place pays better." "You in school full-time, community college, business major. That right, Tony nodded. I want to start something eventually, don't know what yet. Just know I don't want to be stuck in kitchens forever. Nathaniel leaned against the counter. You ever talk to the manager about moving up here, cross-training on the grill? Tony gave a short laugh. He said I should stick to what I can handle and not get ahead of myself, so no. I haven't. Nathaniel's expression didn't change, but inside something shifted. This wasn't just about burnout, it was about potential getting buried under bad leadership. Right before the lunch shift ramped up, Nathaniel stepped outside with a clipboard under the excuse of checking the supply delivery. He was parked around the corner, out of view. He pulled out his phone and called Julia, the company's director of operations. I need you to fly in tonight, he said. Keep it quiet, she paused. Is this about store 7? Yeah, it's worse than we thought. I'm pulling the curtain tomorrow. That night, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. He lay in his hotel bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the past 3 days. The manager's disregard, Alex's strained hand, Tony's ambition being brushed off. None of it sat right. By morning, his plan was set. He arrived at the store just as the first staff member unlocked the front. He wore the same apron, same ball cap, same drawl. But this time, he stayed quiet. Observed, waited. At 10:30, the lunch prep wrapped. At 11, the customers started rolling in. By noon, the ticket board was flooded again. Nathaniel worked the grill beside Alex, who was running on fumes but still steady with his blade. Then came the moment he'd been waiting for. The manager stormed into the back, visibly agitated, waving a receipt. Who messed up the platter on table 6? They're saying the ribs were cold. Again. Alex turned, wiping his hands. They were fresh off the grill. I watched Nate plate it. The manager narrowed his eyes at Nathaniel. You sure you know what you're doing, new guy? Nathaniel took a deep breath and stepped forward. I do. In fact, I know exactly what I'm doing. The room stilled. Alex looked up from the cutting board. Tony stopped mid-step. Nathaniel pulled off his cap and tugged the prosthetic lines loose from his jaw. The entire kitchen watched as his real face emerged. My name is Nathaniel Pierce. I own this company. The silence was absolute. The manager blinked once, then gave a strained laugh. You're joking. Nathaniel met his eyes. No, I've been here 3 days. I've watched how you run this place, and I've seen enough. The manager's expression changed, first confusion, then calculation. Listen, I didn't know, that's the problem. You treat people differently based on who's watching. Nathaniel turned to Alex and Tony. You two take a break, a real one, you've earned it. They hesitated, then stepped back toward the rear exit. Nathaniel pointed to the manager. You and I are going to have a conversation in the office. Now, the man hesitated but followed. Inside, the office was cramped and cluttered. Nathaniel closed the door behind them. You've been running this store for how long? 4 years. And in that time, how many cooks have stayed longer than 6 months? The manager opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Nathaniel continued. I've spoken to the regional team. Your turnover is the highest in the district. Complaints have doubled in the last quarter. You've been cutting corners on training, ignoring basic safety protocols, and mistreating staff. They're just hourly workers. We go through them all the time. Nathaniel's voice dropped. That sentence right there. That's why this ends today, the manager scoffed. What, you're firing me? No, you're being removed, effective immediately. There's a difference. The man stood up fast, jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Nathaniel opened the door. I already made one. I trusted this store was in good hands. He stepped aside and watched as the man walked out without another word. Outside, the kitchen was quiet. Alex stood by the dish sink, towel in one hand. Tony watched from the fryer station, unsure. Nathaniel turned to them. This store's getting new leadership, starting now, and both of you, he looked from Alex to Tony, we need to talk after your shift. He walked toward the front, past the customers who had no idea what just happened. His pace was steady, his mind already working. There was still a long road ahead, but the reckoning had begun. Nathaniel stayed long after the lunch rush ended. The store had quieted, but the tension hadn't left. Customers came and went without knowing what had taken place in the back office, but the staff felt the difference. The manager's absence left a strange quiet over the front counter, like a storm had passed but the air still hadn't cleared. Tony kept his head down, rinsing trays with quick, nervous movements. Alex stood by the dry rack, arms crossed, watching the door that led to the office. Neither spoke. Nathaniel changed out of his apron and returned in a plain polo. No disguise. The prosthetics were gone, and the exhaustion on his face wasn't hidden behind a character anymore. He stepped to the center of the kitchen and waited until both men turned toward him. "I know this has been a strange day," he said, "but I need you both to stay a little longer. We've got something to talk through." Alex nodded once. Tony hesitated, then followed him toward the prep table. Nathaniel pulled up a stool and sat across from them. "When I came here, I didn't know what I'd find. I expected operational issues, maybe some staffing gaps. I didn't expect to find two people holding this place together with almost no support." Tony leaned forward slightly. "Are you shutting the store down?" "No," Nathaniel said. "But I am rebuilding it, from the inside out." Alex glanced toward the line. "You got someone else coming in to manage?" "I do. Julia's in town. She's stepping in temporarily while we restructure." Tony looked at Nathaniel, unsure. "Is she corporate?" "She is, but she listens." "And she started in kitchens, just like this one?" Alex rested his elbow on the table. "What happens to us?" Nathaniel looked at him. "That depends on what you want." Neither spoke. "I'm not offering vague promises," Nathaniel continued, "but I'm offering choices. Tony, I read your application the night I got here. You've never been late, never missed a shift outside of class, and you've jumped stations without being asked. You've got initiative. I want to put you on a paid development path. You'd stay in the store, but we'd assign a certified trainer to mentor you. If you follow through, you'd be eligible to lead kitchen operations in 6 months. Tony blinked. "That's a real thing." "It is, starting today." Alex looked down at the prep table, silent. "And you," Nathaniel said, turning to him. "I saw your name on more customer compliments than anyone else on the staff. You're the reason the food here still meets standard. You've trained more people than this store has had managers." "That doesn't go unnoticed." Alex leaned back against the shelf, arms crossed again. "You offering me a promotion, I'm offering you a decision. You've kept this place running without recognition for years. That ends now. You can stay here and we'll bring in a new manager who actually listens. Or if you're willing, I want to invite you to help us rework training for new hires across all stores. You'd rotate between locations, teaching from the ground up. Pay increase, benefits, and a fixed schedule that lets you be home every evening." Alex didn't answer right away. He stared at the far wall, then at the floor. "I'd have to leave the grill. You'd be training on it. But yeah, you'd be stepping back from daily operations." He rubbed the back of his neck, then looked at Tony. "You'd be all right without me here every day?" Tony nodded slowly. "If you teach me, yeah." Nathaniel waited. Alex exhaled through his nose. "All right, I'll try it, but if I don't like the way it's run, I'm out." "That's fair." Tony leaned forward again. "Are the hours gonna change, like for everyone?" Nathaniel stood. "They will, but not overnight. We're reviewing staffing levels, and I've already approved hiring for 3 new positions here. Once we have coverage, we'll enforce real breaks and consistent schedules. We're also adding a safety lead who will visit stores weekly starting next month. That includes here." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You sure you can staff that fast?" "I'm not, but we're paying above market starting next week. That'll help." Tony looked around the kitchen. "What if we get another manager like the last one?" "You won't," Nathaniel said. "Julia's redoing the hiring process. Final interviews will be done by someone from my team, not just regional. That's permanent." Alex crossed his arms tighter. "I'll believe it when I see it." Nathaniel nodded. "You should." He turned back to the table and placed a slim folder between them. "I'm not asking you to trust everything I say, but I'm asking you to read through this. It's everything we're changing in the next 60 days. Every bullet point, every deadline. My name's on it, and I'll be back in person before the end of the quarter to check in." Tony picked up the folder and flipped it open. His eyes moved across the page slowly as if expecting it to vanish. Nathaniel headed toward the exit. Before he stepped out, he paused. "One last thing," he said without turning. "If either of you ever feel like no one's listening, you call the number on the back of that folder. It goes straight to my office. No middlemen." Neither said anything as he left. Outside, the air was cooling. The sun had passed its peak, casting long shadows across the lot. Julia stood by a rental sedan, tablet in hand. She looked up as Nathaniel approached and gave a quiet nod. How'd they take it? They didn't protest, he said, but they didn't celebrate either. That's a good sign. Means they believe it might be real. He looked back at the building. It has to be. I let this get too far. Julia flipped her tablet shut. You can't fix it all at once, I know, but I can start here. They stood in silence for a moment before she stepped toward the door. I'll be inside. HR's on their way. Nathaniel watched her go, then walked the edge of the lot, stopping near the last smoker vent. The scent of mesquite hung in the air, sharp and earthy. The same smoke that had clung to his clothes all week. The same fire that Alex had tended every day without fail. He thought of the first shift, the dropped cornbread, the heat, the noise. Of Tony watching closely, even when no one was teaching. Of the staff running trays without names, without training, and still showing up. He thought of his father. The way he used to say, "Smoke's only good if someone's tending the flame." Nathaniel stayed until the sun began to dip low behind the trees. Then he turned, got in his truck, and drove off quietly without announcement. Inside Store 7, the grill stayed hot. The food came out on time. And for the first time in a long while, the people behind it knew someone was finally listening.